the face of Europe forever.
As our image is revealed, it's July 14th, 1789, and armed peasants in Paris are protesting at the Bastille prison.
Starting late morning, there's a crowd gathering in front of the Bastille. But the real moment of crisis is about 2 or 3 hours in the middle of the afternoon on July 14th. Somebody fires. We're not sure who fired first, but they fire from inside the prison, largely with muskets, and they start hitting some of the people out in front. Scores of people are now falling.
The Bastille is an enormous, seemingly impenetrable prison that has become infamous with the downtrodden citizens of Paris.
It was the place where people could be secretly put behind bars by decision of the king with no consultation, and it therefore had come to stand for everything that was considered despotic, tyrannical about royal authority at the end of the Age of Enlightenment.
As the 1700s were drawing to a close, philosophers of the Enlightenment, like Voltaire and Rousseau, were writing about the rights of man and questioning the rule of Louis XVI, France's king. Across the Atlantic, the American Revolution put these theories to the test. In France, staggering national debt, widespread unemployment, and extreme food shortages conspired to create an economic tinderbox. For France's peasants, the stark contrast between their bleak existence and the opulent lives of the king and his court gnaw at their growing sense of entitlement. The burgeoning merchant class presses for democracy, and many among the nobility, no fans of the powerful Louis XVI, pick up their cause.
In response to this, King Louis XVI is actually deeply undecided about what to do. His wife, Marie Antoinette, and others in the court are pushing him to take action. What he does is to call up 20 to 30,000 troops from the provinces, has them move to Paris. The atmosphere, therefore, by the beginning of July, is increasingly electric with tension. And then things really start moving at a very, very fast pace on July 12th and July 13th.
Throughout Paris, armed mobs attack government institutions. On July 14th, their target becomes the Bastille, both to free its prisoners and to capture its stores of gunpowder. The mob grows to nearly 1,000 strong. Some of the prison's 100 guards open fire.
Almost 100 people are killed in the crowd outside. Scores others are injured. This is when a key element changes. French guards defect from the army. They join the crowd with their muskets, and they have brought along with them 4 cannons.
In the face of the cannons, the Marquis de Launay, the leader of the Bastille's troops, is convinced by his soldiers to surrender and lowers the drawbridge over the prison's moat. The Bastille has fallen, and its prisoners freed.
The fall of the Bastille is the opening act of the French Revolution. It's far from being the final act. It takes 3 years, but over that period of 3 years, the king steadily loses his position. He loses his authority, and then he loses his head on January 21st, 1793.
Even with the death of Louis XVI, monarchs and emperors would rule France for almost another 100 years. But once the country does gain its freedom in the 1880s, the anniversary of the storming of the Bastille is chosen as a national holiday.
Just as the Statue of Liberty has become a kind of enduring symbol all over the world of the idea of freedom, so too the attack on the Bastille has become the model of what it means when a people goes into revolution.
The day after the storming, crowds gathered at the Bastille and began dismantling it, piece by piece. One clever entrepreneur decided to sell the stones as revolutionary souvenirs. The idea caught on, and the rubble of the Bastille spread across France faster than the spirit of reform. For the History Channel, I'm Mike Rowe. Join me next time on The Most.
This was one busy guillotine blade back in 1792. The French were lopping off heads at a record pace thanks to the sharp precision of the new killing contraption. No one knew that better than Marie Antoinette, a teen queen, who, during the height of the French Revolution, was awaiting her turn before the shiny blade. Come now and see how she met the blade whose downfall led to hers. The revolution in France in the 18th century was typical of revolutionary times. The country was in disarray. The monarchy had lost touch with the problems of the peasants, and King Louis XVI had lost control. Riots and massacres happened regularly. Executions during these tumultuous days were on the rise. The arm of the Grand Executioner, the chief axeman, was getting tired. Why not mechanize? Save a little sweat. Let gravity do the job. In 1789, that's what Dr. Joseph Ignace Guillotine told the French National Assembly. He proposed an improved neck chopper. The mechanism falls like lightning, he said. The head flies off, the blood spurts, the man no longer exists. Fast, user-friendly. It was also seen as a more humane way to do the job. One clean slice as opposed to repeated chops. And very democratic. As it was, peasants were generally hanged or tortured to death, while noblemen were beheaded by an unsteady sort of chopping blade. All would be equal under this blade's cold precision. And with prisons overcrowded, slicing the waiting list was a top priority. Guillotine got the go-ahead. A physician named Antoine Louis drew up plans for the device.
It's often been said that that space between the parallel bars where the blade hangs is the space of death. Death becomes visible because it's that space which will be traversed by the falling blade.
A harpsichord maker actually built the original machine, which was first tested on sheep, then human cadavers.
And then the first public testing was made and a criminal was executed.
That was on April 25th, 1792. The crowds were huge, as usual. Executions were entertainment. They were used to a pageantry of mutilation. Axe-wielding executioners often missed. Today would be different.
The great innovation as far as the blade was concerned was to make the sloping blade, because the sloping blade then cuts incrementally into the neck and does a slicing rather than a chopping.
The aim of this machine was always dead on. And of course, there were many more slicings per hour. As many as 30 criminals could be dispatched in one day of reckoning. The blade fell perfectly, every time. Ah, sweet music. Unless, of course, you were King Louis XVI. Louis's rule had disintegrated, yet he would not step aside. Revolutionaries and counter-revolutionaries were all calling for his head. On August 10th, 1792, he and his queen